So I'll call this regular meeting of the Board of Trustees of Flower Bluff Independent School District to order at 6:02 p.m. Let the record show that we do have a quorum with all members present. And I would like to introduce to everyone Pastor Jess Cole from Grace Community Church here in Flower Bluff. He will be leading the invocation. So Pastor, I'm going to turn it over to you right now.
All right, well, thank you. Right before I pray, let me just, I've told Shirley this, but this whole pandemic has got to be a surprise and confusing to everyone involved. And one thing that I've learned is it's not a surprise to God, and that He's put you, all of you, in this position. And He has you here for a reason. It's not an accident that you're on the board. It's not an accident that you're in this administration. And so understand that God's hand is upon you as you make the decisions that you need to make. So let's pray. Father, it's my prayer that today that each of these that are making these decisions for our young people and for our community, Father, that you will give them a confidence that they are able to do what needs to be done. And because your hand is upon them, and that you have put them in this position for a time like this. And so, Father, I pray your confidence over them. I pray your peace over them, Father, that you will give them a peace that passes all understanding, and that they will be able to make the decisions that need to be made, and that they will do it in a way that they have your peace upon them. And I pray your wisdom over them, Father, and every decision that they make, Father, may it be in accordance to your will and with your wisdom, Father, that they make this decision and the decisions that they need to make. We thank you so much for them. We pray for our superintendent, and we pray healing over him and for his wife. And may your hand be upon their family, Father. And we pray all of this in Jesus' name. Amen.
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 Perfect. Thank you very much. I hope we can get you back to do that again.
We believe in y'all. God bless you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jess.
Thank you,
Thank you, Jess.
Thank you, Jim.
Okay, now we are going to have our Pledge of Allegiance and the pledge to the Texas flag. So I think, there we go. So if you'll just stand where you are, I'm going to see if I can do this. I'm supposed to move that and stand. Okay. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And now for the Texas pledge. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible. All right, you may be seated. Okay. Adjust your screens. All right, at this point, if I don't have any objections from the board, I would like to move action item 11E to this point of the meeting so that we may go ahead and make this official with Mr. Kelly. So do I have any objections to that at this point?
No, ma'am.
Very good. Then I will entertain a motion to approve for approval to appoint Joe Kelly as acting superintendent.
Madam President, I move that we appoint Joe Kelly as acting.
Okay, so Mike Morgan makes the motion, and the second came from Ms. Peters. We had a little feedback there, I think. All in favor, would the board members please just raise your hands so we can see them on the screen? Very good. Very good. 7-0, Monica. I know you're out there. You probably saw. Okay, so Mr. Kelly, welcome aboard officially. And so now you will be you'll be back in your spot. All right, so let's move on now to
May I
Madam
just-
yeah, did you want to say something, Mr. Kelly? Where are you? Yeah.
I want to thank the board for putting their trust in me and our outstanding team one more time. We're going to get through this, okay? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. And I'm sorry I
Madam
cut
President,
you off. I
do we need to
apologize for
approve the contract?
that. We can do that. Mr. Kelly, can we do that back on item 13? Or do
I
we
don't
need to do it now?
I don't see why we couldn't. I mean, all I'm doing is just talking and helping you facilitate the agenda. So I don't see why you couldn't actually act on it down the road.
Okay, gotcha. All right, perfect. Sounds good. Thank you, Mr. Morgan, for reminding me of that too. And did we have any, let me see where I am, any audience comments come in? I don't know who was collecting those. Did we have any come in?
No, ma'am. There were no audience comments. I'm sorry. It's Kim Sneed.
Thank you, Ms. Sneed. I appreciate that. And for those who are audience access, if there is a link on our Facebook page, if you're already watching, you already know this, so I don't know why I'm repeating it. But you can also go to the website to get the board book itself so that you can follow along with the agenda. All right, let's move on to reports without.
Madam President,
Yes.
how about we back up to presentations? I saw something.
Oh, shoot, I forgot. Yeah, sorry.
Between Jeff and Dr.
Yes, no, you're
Fergie.
right. You're right.
And Jeff, I'm going to call on you to do a proper introduction, if you don't mind.
I sure don't mind. I hope it will be proper. I don't want to make any misrepresentations. As many of you know, I have invited Dr. Jaime Fergie to speak with us tonight and give a presentation. Dr. Fergie, we are just extraordinarily lucky to have somebody of his talent and caliber here in our own community. Dr. Fergie is a fellow with the Society for Hospital Epidemiology of America, an elected member of the Society for Pediatric Research. He is a fellow of the American Academy of Pediatrics. He is medical director of the Global Institute for Hispanic Health. He's professor of pediatrics at A&M University, Texas A&M, and he is director of infectious diseases here at Driscoll Children's Hospital. So that's just a brief highlight of his resume, but suffice it to say, we are very lucky to have somebody of his caliber in this community, and very grateful to have him here today to give a presentation about the coronavirus and its effects on the community. With that, I'll shut up and let the smarter person speak. Dr. Jaime Fergie.
Welcome, Dr. Fergie. We appreciate you being here.
Thank you very much for having me here. It's a pleasure. It's an honor to speak to all of you on this subject. It's, as you know, it's a very emotional subject. It's a very difficult subject. I think that all of us are becoming experts at this time on this issue. I mean, I think all of you are reading about it and reading the news and reading the journals probably. And we're all learning together. Complex issues that we deal with. And, first of all, I want to emphasize that I do understand how difficult these are and everything that you all have to do in the school district. And also all the principals. So it is a tough situation. Second disclosure I want to make is, what I'm saying here today is my opinion. And of course not reflects anybody else's, but I'll try to make a presentation that is based on some of reasonable publications. But my experience about this issue before is that it elicits an emotional response for good reasons that I understand. So let's see if I can have control of the presentation. Let's see, how can I do this? If I can get, let me see if I can share my screen here right now, because then I would like to put my slides on. And I didn't ask you how much time do I have, but I would like to know if you can tell me how long should I take.
I'm thinking, how long do you think? 15 minutes, maximum 15? Can you do it in 15?
I will give it a try.
Okay, thank you.
I did it early today for Incarnate Word Academy. So you will see a question there about Incarnate Word, but it applies the same to all of you. So I think this is the issue. Back to school. Is it safe for the children? Is it safe for adults? Do children get infected? Do they get sick? Do children transmit the virus? What do we do if we have infected children in school? What can we do to mitigate the situation? And let me ask you this question too. I mean, you don't have to, it's rhetorical right now, but I want you to think about this. Since the school have been closed, since the beginning of this pandemic, do you know people in the school family, in your school family, who have been sick with this? And I think it's important because once the schools reopen for in-person instruction in September, and people will be sick too. And I think that it's going to happen. And are we going to see an increase in cases? We really don't know. I think it is reasonable to suspect perhaps an increase, but through my presentation, I don't think it's going to be a huge increase in what we're seeing. So I'll try to go and provide some answers throughout my presentation here today. Oh, sorry, going too fast. Hey, this is from the Journal of the American Medical Association. I think you will all relate to this. School superintendents confront COVID-19. There are no good options for next year. So there's not a win-win situation here in which everybody is going to be satisfied with this and everybody's going to do well. But I think you need to go back to your mission of why you do what you do. And I think that will help you guide your decision. So our students, the same question that I put together are the same question they are put in this article. Our students, SARS-CoV-2 spreaders, educated guests, of course, school days in the time of COVID, rational expectations, school staff in the front line. And I will tell you right now, I think the school staff, all of you who work there, and the teachers, I know I'm talking to the board, but the teachers, the ancillary staff, they are the ones that I'm most concerned with right now. I guess I do not have to spend much time on this or the importance of reopening American schools this fall. This is from the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. Very evident what schools do from health point of view, not only educational point of view, but from health point of view is extremely important. So it's not a discussion about the health of the community versus education. It's actually a discussion about health, the community versus health of the children and the community and the education of the children. You know that 20% of all the referral for child protective services come from the schools. So if the teachers are not seeing what's going on with these children, they cannot refer. But all the teachers refer when they see child abuse. And that is very important. It's not happening right now. So I'm not going to read all the slides, but you understand that the point is critically important to open the school in person as much as possible. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, the CDC. This is to put it in perspective. I'm not making a direct comparison because there's danger between influenza and COVID-19, but I think to frame the argument a little bit, remember during the most recent pandemic we have had in this country, that was the 2009 influenza pandemic. It's about 76,000 or 80,000 people died in the country with that influenza pandemic. But when you look at the number of children who died, there were 358 children who died at that time with that pandemic. The schools remain open most of the time, or briefly closed. And so far, there have been 64 children in the country who have died with COVID-19. Yeah, so I think it's an important point to think about this. So based on current data, the rate of infection with younger school children and from student to teacher has been low, especially proper precautions are followed. There have also been few reports of children being the primary source of COVID transmission among family members. Go back to the experience in China. When WHO sent a team of investigators to China, to Wuhan, and look into the situation there, they reported, and that is available in the WHO website, called Mission to China, Report of Mission to China. Not even one case they could find in which the source of the infection was a child. Not even one, the source was a child. Of course, it can happen, but what I'm trying to say, it's a very rare situation. This is the current situation in the United States. On the left is number of percentage of cases, on the right is death. And you can see children do get infected, of course they do. And I see it at Driscoll all the time. They get infected. They don't die with this very much. Unfortunately, don't get very sick. That's a very important point. I think when you do it, going through decision making, this is one point important for decision making. Yes, the children get sick. I see it almost without an exception. Every child who comes to Driscoll to be tested because the parents want the child to be tested many times, not because they're particularly sick. And becomes positive if because mom or dad were infected. That is very, very important. Mortality, extremely low. We haven't had one yet. I mean, we will. I mean, it's unavoidable. We will. But I have had many children, not many, I have several children throughout my career here in Corpus Christi who have died with influenza. So it's important to keep that in perspective. When you look at the influenza death, and again, I don't want to stretch this comparison too much, but I think it's important to look at this. We don't never close the schools for this, but in every single season that we have data on death of children with influenza, 16, 17, 17, 18, 18, 19, 19, 20, more children died with influenza than children have died with COVID. The schools were never closed. And it's very important to point out, the schools are the place where influenza is transmitted the most. The schools are the place where influenza virus is spread to the community from the children, child to child, and child to adult, but not with COVID. For all we know right now, it's a very uncommon event. So more information I want to share here from the CDC, and that is the children are less likely, and that is uncontested. Children are less likely to get COVID-19 than adults, and when they do get it, they generally have less serious illness. Let me tell you about my experience here at Driscoll Children's Hospital. We had to close a floor in the hospital. One of our floors was completely closed down, 7th floor, because we have no patients. We're out of patients. I mean, it's absurd. But we have a situation in which.
Uh-oh. I think we lost him. Did we lose him?
Let me look 1 second. No, he's still there. I think it's his connection.
Okay.
Call him if that's if he doesn't reconnect here.
I still show him as a participant.
Can he see what we see? You don't know.
No, it's just a frozen screen. So,
Okay.
but he's showing as a participant.
I'm calling him right now. I don't know if he'll pick up.
Okay.
Hey, Dr. Fergie, it's Jeff Frank. We just lost you on Zoom. Is it back? Sure, sure. Oh, wow, sure. Okay, yeah, it would appear that we've lost you there. Alex, do you see Dr. Jaime still as a participant?
No, he just dropped off right now.
Okay. You're completely out. So if you try to get back in, then probably that's best.
Here he comes.
Yeah, he's reconnecting now. Okay, I'm going to hang up with you here. All right. Okay, he should be back in there. There we go.
I see him. Are you there, Dr. Fergie?
I don't know if he can hear us. I certainly see you.
Alex, can he send you his presentation and you show it? Would that be, maybe that's the hang up? Like, I know, I don't know why I'm saying anything. Never mind.
He could if he wanted to send it. I don't know if he knows my email address, but he just dropped off again.
Okay.
He could do that and then call in on his, log in with his phone. He may be having mic problems with his computer.
I'll call him right now and suggest that.
Yeah, because I've seen this happen in Zoom meetings where people have some kind of cross up on their microphone on their computer and then they can't seem to get it to work. I don't know what causes it.
Hmm.
Hey, no, it's okay. If you send me the presentation, then I can play it and you can just call into the Zoom meeting on your phone. Sure. Okay. And then, okay, will do. Oh, okay. Okay. Well, if you got it, thank you. All right. Thank you. Bye-bye. Oops, I meant to be on mute at that point. I'm sorry. Dr. Jaime is trying to resolve the issues. It's extra complex, I guess, because he's using his computer remotely, his hospital computer remotely. So he'll be getting back in here. He seems to know what's going on. He's going to fix it. He asked that we move on to some other business and just return to him when he logs back in.
Thank you, Mr. Rank. And before we leave presentations, we'll be coming back to them, of course. I do want to recognize a group of ladies from the Fleet Reserve Association, the Ladies Auxiliary Branch 94. And I know Dr. Bargansky has these things. They're masks. These ladies made them. They are washable. They donated them. They have children's sizes and they have adult sizes. They sanitize them, bag them individually, and donated those to the school. And I just really wanted to thank them publicly for doing that, because we have an amazing community and people are always willing to just step up and help us out. So I don't want to fail to recognize when somebody does that. They've really been, I mean, I just see them all sewing away, doing their thing, and it was great. Oh, there's the picture of one right there. Dr. Bargansky has it right there. Aren't those cute? It was amazing. So I really want to, I think their president is Paula Becerra, and her group did that. They do all kinds of things for the community. Again, that's the Ladies Auxiliary from Fleet Reserve Association Branch 94, right up here on Flower Bluff Drive. Okay.
Mrs.
Yes.
Thornton, I did want to let you know that all the principals got them this week. And so they're on the campuses now.
Very good. Thank you. Thank you very much. All right, we'll quickly move on to the reports without presentations. This includes summary of finance reports, update on capital construction projects, quarterly investment report, district health and safety reports for 2019-2020, the student parent handbooks for 2021, and the district and campus improvement plans and end of the year evaluation for 19-20. Is there any one of these items that a board member would like to have removed for a presentation? Okay, then we'll move on to report presentations. 9A, update on bond projects, Mr. Kelly.
Jay, fill me in. Where are we? What's going on?
I am here.
Good.
Did my video? Okay, there we go.
Yep.
All right, so we have one last bond project. It's finishing up, and it's the renovation to the high school. We're working in several different areas of the school, and we have substantial completion punch list walkthrough scheduled for either Friday or this Monday. I have a prior commitment in my office on Friday, but if I can leave in the afternoon, I will get over to the high school to do a punch list walkthrough. Otherwise, it'll be Monday morning. So basically, that indicates they are almost done. They are renovating the front of the school to put aluminum and glass storefront in to create a security vestibule that will have controlled access. The old nurses' room is being renovated to be the new security office and future police department. The nurses being moved down the hall into room 114, and we're providing some new millwork, cabinet work for that. The 800 hall had the entire hallway all the way down has a new ceiling and new light fixtures and new fire alarm devices. I think some of the fire, I can't remember for sure if we've replaced all the fire alarm devices. Anyway, the 300 hall, there were 4 classrooms that were completely renovated. New flooring, new ceiling, new paint, and some new electrical outlets and data outlets. The 500 wing, we turned there was a large storage area. It used to be a shop. We turned that into 3 classrooms. And the existing shop space was also renovated. New ceiling in the existing classroom that was in there. And we're providing a new air handler, which we knew at the time was going to be a very long lead time item. In fact, BLF construction was pretty on point with that. Before we even had the construction contract signed, they ran the shop drawings through and we got those approved and the unit ordered. And it shipped, see, today's 30th, I think it shipped 2 days ago. So it should be here next week and they will be able to install that. So that's really the only thing that's going to hold them up from final completion. But it was known at the very start that that would be a little bit of a long lead time item. But everything else is in good shape in those spaces. The finishes are nearly complete. I'll know for sure when I do my walkthrough just how complete they were, but Tuesday when I was there, they looked pretty good. And then in the courtyards, in the middle of the high school, there are 2 courtyards. We cleaned those up and put a bunch of concrete pavers in and some decomposed granites to minimize how much lawn maintenance needs to be done in those spaces. And also kind of provide a nice hard surface, not dirt anymore, where teachers could possibly have outdoor classes if they wanted to, or kids could congregate in there and not have to worry about tracking in dirt. So that's pretty much it in a nutshell. And things look pretty good. The construction has been going very smoothly.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Porterfield. Are there any questions from the board for Jay? Everybody's good?
Yeah. Thank you, Jay.
You're very welcome. There was one other minor thing on my report, if you don't mind another minute.
Sure, go ahead.
We're doing some renovations, some overlays to the existing concrete. Do what? Did an overlay to some tennis courts. And so it's an asphalt overlay. They provided, I believe it's a 2-inch thick overlay on court number 7. And the overlay is in the process of curing, and then they're going to be able to finish that up and do the striping. I think Erasmo is logged in. If he might be able to fill y'all in with more information if you want to know more about that.
Okay.
Jay, let me ask you this. Are those the tennis courts that way back when we had the cracks and what have you with?
No, sir.
No. So is that problem still out there?
I believe it is. We did some investigation on that. They cut some concrete cores out of it and did some forensics on the concrete itself, and it appeared that the concrete was fine. There was nothing wrong with it. That was my understanding.
Okay.
Rosmo, are you there?
Yes. Um,
Can you add to
I'm-
that?
I can supplement that. Mr. Kelly, the concrete courts were analyzed with concrete cores. And so where we're at is we need to engage the forensics engineer consultant. And so we're working with administration to get that finalized, to get those that group on board. They've done some preliminary work, but they haven't done the detailed work that they need to do.
Okay. I'm good. I mean, that thing's been hanging out there for a while. Last time we talked, seemed like that according to specs that the contractor met all the benchmarks, but yet it's still cracked. So I think that's kind of where we left it the last time we talked about it. So I'll get with y'all in the next couple of weeks and we'll see where that is. Okay.
Yes, sir, definitely.
All righty.
Thank you, Mr.
President,
Kelly, and thank you, everybody else. Are we, is Dr. Fergie back on now? There he is. There he is. Mr. Kelly, did you want to say something else before? I think we'll go back to Dr.
Oh,
Fergie.
yeah, let's pick it up with Dr. Fergie.
Okay. All right, here we go.
Oh, wow.
Welcome back.
Thank you. I tell you, I'm so sorry, but I got the help of my daughter, who is a architecture student. So hopefully I'm using her computer now. We're in better shape. What I need to, what I need to, let me see if it worked. Where was I when I stopped talking? I was here?
No, the one before, I think.
The one before. Okay, so perfect.
There you go, right there.
Screen here. Hey, I thank you. I'm so sorry for this. I don't know.
That's all right.
20 minutes before to try to avoid this problem, but things happen.
Yeah, we know.
Okay. Hey, so what do we know about COVID in children? Children are less likely to get COVID than adults, and when they do get it, it's less. They get less sick. I was telling you about my experience at Driscoll. I told you about the situation that we basically have a hospital at 40% capacity right now. Evidence from other countries suggests that most pediatric cases result from children becoming infected by family members. Exactly the same situation we are seeing here every day at Driscoll. Everybody we're testing is because the parents are sick, but the parents are not getting sick from their children. Now, really important here, not everything is black and white, as we know, not everything is 100%. Children who are medically complex, who have neurologic, genetic, metabolic condition, of which we have several in our community. We have many. I mean, we see it at Driscoll, or who have congenital heart disease, of which we have a good amount, are at an increased risk. They say might be at increased risk. I'm pretty sure by now that they are increased risk for severe illness compared to other children. Children with, the other thing I've seen here, obesity and diabetes in adolescent is a risk factor. What I have not seen is asthma. We have so many asthmatic kids, but we are not seeing really a problem with children with asthma. This slide comes from Europe, from the European CDC and the United Kingdom. And also, it's the same thing. Children are likely infected in their household. 2 studies on household transmission estimated the household at secondary attack rate to be 16.3% to 13.8%. So really, really important. Age stratified analysis showed that the secondary attack rate in children was 4.7% compared to 17.1% in adults more than 20 years of age or equal, and that the odds of infection in children was 0.26 times that of among the elderly, so very small. So child to adult transmission appears to be uncommon. In the investigation of the first outbreak in France, this is really applicable to all the schools. One infected child went to 3 different schools while the child was sick, despite having 112 contacts it identified, including children and teachers. No symptomatic secondary cases were detected. There are few cases reported with poorly documented data describing a pediatric case as a potential source of infection of adults. That's really, really important. This is the first report from China on 2,143 pediatric patients. Over 90% of all the patients were no symptoms or were mild or moderate. So very few had severe. From the United States data, very recent publication, July 10th, MNWR, this is the publication from the CDC. Mortality, younger than 18, 16 cases, less than 0.1%. So very, very important. I mean, children are not really transmitting this, are not suffering very much from it. It is, of course, a generalization. There are exceptions, and we see some of them. A publication dealing with the children going to intensive care unit in the United States from March through April, 48 children. And the point of this is, and I want to highlight this, the majority of these children had some significant comorbidities, and some of them were what's called medically complex, long-term dependence on technological support associated with developmental delay and or genetic anomalies. So very important. So despite everything else, and I thought it was interesting in May 18, says some French schools closed again due to COVID-19, but it was not really surprising, and there were very few, and they still, the Minister of Education stood by the country's decision to reopen a school, claiming that it was true, relatively small proportion of schools being shuttered indicates how a strict measure and protocol around operating schools were working. That's the only one I know in which they, after opening, they closed back some schools, but there were only some. The majority of them remain open. France also, later on, this is June 23rd, this is after that other slide I show you, it's June 23rd, and this is from a very well-respected institute, the Institute Pasteur, say school children don't spread coronavirus, French study says. From Switzerland, they also are in favor of opening school, and they support the opinion of keeping this school open. They cite the situation in Iceland and Australia to make it clear that children are rarely affected by the disease and are not the engine of the epidemic. Denmark, reopening school in Denmark did not do anything to the outbreak data shows. Copenhagen sent children back to school, and daycare center in Denmark, the first country in Europe to do so, did not lead to an increase in coronavirus infections. Sweden, this is particularly significant because Sweden is almost an experiment on its own. Sweden kept the country open overall, and they didn't close the school. So Sweden's decision to keep the school open during the pandemic resulted in no higher rate of infection among its school children than in neighboring Finland, where school did temporarily close, their public health agency said in a joint report. So they're interested. One country, neighboring country, one is closed the school, the other one didn't close the schools, and no difference in the number of cases. So this is directly taken from Public Health Agency of Sweden, and they talk about what I mentioned before, and they conclude that closure or not closure of the school had no measurable direct impact on the number of laboratory confirmed cases in school-age children in Finland or Sweden. The negative effect of closing school must be weighed against the positive indirect effect it might have on the mitigation of the COVID-19 pandemic. Australia, the National Centre for Immunisation Research and Surveillance reported in New South Wales, this includes Sydney. In New South Wales from March to mid-April 2020, 80 persons, 9 students and 9 staff from 15 schools were confirmed as having COVID-19. All of them had an opportunity to transmit the illness to others in their school. So there were 735 exposures to the 128 staff who were close contact of these 18 cases. One child from a primary school and one child from a high school, maybe they think could have potentially contracted the COVID from the initial case at their school. No teacher or staff member contracted COVID-19 from any of the initial school cases. I thought it was, it should be reassuring, I think, for all of you, because it's a lot of fear associated with this. And I understand it. I understand it because we have had people, we have had doctors at Driscoll who have died with this and in the community who have died. And so we are very cognizant of the seriousness of this situation, but it's so important that we try to follow science we have, information we have, and of course, things change. This is from the American Academy of Pediatrics, an editorial. Basically, the editorial said this: COVID-19 transmission in children, the child is not to blame. This I want to share with all the schools and everybody because it's so critical about the use of masks. This information came out July 14, again from the CDC in the MMWR publication. And they say, they look at this situation that happened in Springfield, Missouri. There was this two hairdressers that work in a store, and one of them got sick, continued to work, was tested, but it took many days for the test to come back, and she continued to work. Second person who worked with her got sick a few days later, continued to work, was tested, continued to work. Eventually, both of them stopped working when they got the result that they were sick. But then there was a very detailed analysis of the 139 clients they exposed. And you know how close that exposure is. If somebody working on the hair, and among 139, nobody got sick. Now, the important thing is everybody was wearing masks. The employees, the two ladies were wearing masks, and the clients were wearing masks. Not a single person became sick with COVID-19. Now, so keep that in mind. I mean, all of these things I'm giving you is a little piece of information I think will help you in understanding the decisions you're making or helping you with decisions you're making. This is study also from MMWR, this comes from Colorado. This was looking at exposures where people were where people were acquiring the COVID-19 before the schools were closed. Okay, this is before school was closed. So look at the right side of the slide, exposure setting. Well, most people were getting workplace, household, order unknown, transportation, rideshare, hotel, healthcare. Finally, a tiny percentage of the people were getting it from the schools, most of them probably adults. So the American Academy of Pediatrics came out with, I would say, good guidance, with good suggestions, but a strong statement. The American Academy of Pediatrics strongly advocate that all policy consideration for the coming school year should start with the goal of having a student physically present in school. The other point about this whole epidemic and the whole school closure, not a school, but societal closure, is that there may come a point in which the number of lives lost from economic, social, and psychological consequences of different policy decisions will outweigh the number of lives lost from infection. We do not know how many lives we're losing because of the closure in society. I can tell you, I'm extremely concerned with the fact that the utilization of routine vaccines for the prevention of measles, mumps, rubella, varicella, whooping cough have dramatically decreased during these last few months. And those are illnesses like, for example, measles have a reproduction rate of about 18. COVID-19 may be about 3. Whooping cough is also 12, 13. So think about the consequences, medical consequences of the lockdown and on all those things are phenomenal. People with cancer were not getting diagnosed, were not getting therapy. We're seeing more children arriving at our hospital with diabetic ketoacidosis because they were not coming early, they were afraid. It's a lot of things to talk about this. So back to school, well, this is my very personal opinion, supported, of course, by the American Academy of Pediatrics and also I think by the CDC. Back to school, I say yes. I think that there's so many negatives for school not going to school. Is it safe for children? Yes, I think it's safe in the sense like getting into a plane is safe or going to school in a car is safe. It's never 100% safe, but it's safe. The risk appears to be small. Is it safe for adults? Well, I tell you here, this is where I am a little bit more concerned for the schools. I think the adult-to-adult transmission is a concern. We have seen in the hospital sometimes, we have seen that one of the riskiest places is the break rooms, where people go for lunch and they remove their mask and there's small places. I would suggest do something about that. That is important. Everybody should wear masks. All the adults for sure. Children who can wear masks should wear masks. Do children get infected? Absolutely. We have many positive tests that we do at risk almost every day. Do children get sick? Yes. Do children transmit the virus? Minimally, if anything, it's not absolute. So I'm sure some of them, and probably the older ones who are more like adults will transmit it. what to do if a child is infected in your school district. Just that child should go home and stay at home for 10 days from the day the child develops symptoms. This is, by the way, what we do in the hospitals right now. This has evolved, by the way. This has evolved. We don't do any more testing for people to come back to work at the hospital, because the test, and this can be very important for decision making, it's important for you to know, the nasal test, the PCR test, can remain positive for many, many weeks if the person being perfectly well. But we know that after 10 days, a normal person is not going to transmit the virus. Nobody's going to get sick from that person. Mitigation strategies, yes. Look at all the mitigation strategies that are there in terms of social distancing, of course. There are limits. Let me tell you, in Europe at the beginning of the pandemic, they used to say 3 feet, 1 meter. Then they went to 2 meters. That was a very small gain from one meter to 2 meters. So, you know, it's a balancing act. You do reasonable things, what you can, but on the other hand, you have a very important goal of taking care of the education and the welfare of the children that you are taking care of. So, hey, this is my presentation, and it's been a pleasure listening to be able to speak to you. And I want to tell you, I understand this is serious. I understand this is emotional. I empathize with the people who are very concerned about this. I am concerned too. I go to the hospital every day, and I'm also worried. I take precautions. So let's talk about it, and I'll try to answer any question you may have.
First, Dr. Fergie, I cannot thank you enough for this presentation. And I don't know if you could hear my sigh of relief, because you answered a lot of questions that I had on my mind. And so right now, if the board or Mr. Kelly, if you have any questions of Dr. Fergie, we're certainly blessed to have him here tonight.
The only thing I was thinking was, it seemed like a lot of the stuff was really geared towards the presentation towards younger kids. So and you said adult to adult gives you some concern. I'm thinking high school kids.
Yeah. I think when you talk about the higher schoolers, it's a little bit more concerned, not from the point of view of them getting sick, because they don't. I mean, the mortality under 18 years of age, that's a 64 number that from the CDC, that goes 0 to 18 years of age. That is very small. So they don't really get very sick. But I am a little more concerned about them being more like adults, more able to transmit the virus. So I would be very at ease with the younger kids, a little bit more careful with the older ones in terms of, and the older ones can wear masks. You see, that's a good thing. You can ask your high schoolers to wear a mask. They should be able to tolerate that without a problem. And that is a great mitigation strategy. It's working. It's working very well. So I agree that a lot of the strongest part of the data is the younger you are, the less likely it is. But still, even the adolescents and the high schoolers are not getting sick. They're not dying with this. Can, of course, and we, one of these days you're going to hear in the news that child died. But I would still think that they can go to school, and the high schoolers are old enough, smart enough to understand this and to participate in all the mitigation, the social distancing, of course, is the hand sanitation, alcohol-based hand sanitizer everywhere, easy access for all of them. When they eat, that's the other situation, the cafeteria situation too, like at our cafeteria, at our hospital, we made it impossible for people to sit together. You remove chairs, remove tables, remove things, make more space. So I'm sure you can come up with ideas, but I think when you put everything in the balance, I still think it is really important for all of them to go back to school.
Okay.
Dr. Fergie,
Again, that's my personal opinion, and I know there is disagreement on this, but I just give you my bias.
Thank you. And board members, if you'll raise your hands if you have a question, and then I can call on you, or if you have a comment. Mr. Rank.
Yeah, Dr. Fergie, I've got a question. You mentioned children with more complex medical diagnosis, with perhaps comorbidities. You mentioned in particular diabetes. Should schools be taking special precautions for those particular children? that are different than the precautions that we're taking for the general population? And if so, what kind of precautions would you recommend?
Yeah, that's the tough issue. You know, the congenital heart disease, the children with who need a ventilator, the multiple handicapped children. I mean, perhaps those are the children that, if they could stay at home, those will be the ones to have distance learning, perhaps a little bit longer. As long as the home environment is better, you know, as long as the home environment is more secure, that will be a reasonable thing. Beyond that, if they're coming to school, then obviously it's the same measures that we do for everybody else, but it's just like you have to really be sure that the people are wearing their masks, that everybody's doing hand sanitation, that the social distancing is happening. And all of that we're going to have to be doing for a while until we have vaccines and better therapeutics. And I'm optimistic on this.
Good. Any other questions? And I have one, Dr. Fergie. When you were referencing the European schools and the countries there that either closed or didn't close but kept the schools open, and were the children practicing social distancing? Do you have anything on that?
Some of those school districts were practicing social distancing. Some of them were wearing masks. Not all of them, on the other hand, and they still did okay. So basic thing is all the information we have. The children do not appear to be the ones to transmit this. Totally different from other viral infection, RSV, parainfluenza, adenovirus, long list. Boy, children. I make fun of when I do lectures sometimes on other issues. When we could make fun of things and make jokes. This is not a good time, but I would say, I tell people stay away from children.
Typically, yeah.
Yeah, stay away from them. Because they're going to get you sick. I tell people, you know, I see a lot of, you know, infectious disease especially. I see a lot of children. Every child I see is infectious. And I don't get sick at work because I take precautions at work. But when I have my little children, I would get sick because of them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but not in this case. Okay.
My son-in-law calls our grandchildren petri dishes.
Yes.
Just picking up terms.
Yes, that's it. But the different thing, I don't know exactly why they are not for COVID. There's an issue, a complex issue about receptors and the development of receptors for the virus. It appears that children do not develop them until later on in life. It's called the angiotensin converting enzyme receptor in the cell. You may have read about that. And it appears that the children do not develop them until later on. So there may be some science behind that. It's still very murky.
Madam President, one more question.
One more, Mr. Rank, go ahead.
Dr. Fergie, when flu season does come around, when we're facing the normal flu season,
yes,
does that change the approach that we should be taking because there appears to be some overlap of the symptoms?
Absolutely. You know, that's the reason I'm going to be out there pushing so hard this year for influenza vaccine for everybody because of that situation. That the symptoms at the beginning, how can you tell them apart? You cannot tell them apart at the beginning. They just look the same. Actually, they look the same. You know, most of the diagnoses we make of children are just what I call purely incidental. They come with a fever, some cough and congestion, and we have this fantastic test that we can use, molecular biology tests that they diagnose 27 things at the same time. So, oh, it's COVID, but the child is just like a cold. So for this season, it's going to be very important. Everybody gets influenza vaccine, even though it's not it's far from a perfect vaccine. It's the best we have. Good news is this. We know from the southern hemisphere of the world right now, where they should see a lot of flu, they're not seeing it. They're not seeing it. So I predict that if we continue doing the thing we're doing, the flu season is going to be very mild, as well as the RSV season and other viruses, because this social distancing, wearing masks, hand sanitation are the same thing that prevent all the viral infections.
Wow. That is all good information. All right, I'm going to give everybody one last chance to ask a question of Dr. Fergie, and then maybe we can forward questions to you later if that would be permissible.
Yeah, you know, and things change, and they do change. I'll be glad to speak to all of you again, and I'll be available. I'm at Driscoll. You know, we want to be a resource for the whole community.
Thank you so much. And thank you, Mr. Rank, for inviting him tonight, because I think it's been very helpful for everybody to hear this. Very helpful. Thank you, sir. And I'm sorry, I'm glad you have a daughter who can help you out with your
Yeah,
technology.
there's nothing wrong with that. Thank you so much. And well,
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm gonna sign off then.
Okay.
Thank you, Dr. Fergie.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Okay. Wow, that was a lot of good information. That was a lot of good information. All right, let's keep rolling. Report with presentations. Item B, 9B, review of school nutrition department. Mr. Kelly.
That is Miss Day that's going to talk to you about that.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. There was a replacement page sent with the update. Everyone has that. We lined out our summer procedures where we were grab and go and what we did through COVID in that, and detailed the meals served. The second half of March, when we started grab and go, 4,632, and then in April over 13,000. We tapered down in May, and in June only 4,700. But the federal government rolled out the PEBT, where they front loaded SNAP cards for the families, so they had other resources. So we kind of tapered off on the summer, and then we've been planning for the new school year, and we're grab and go, obviously through closure, and then a myriad of solutions depending on the instructional setting of the kids. And every year we have to do our meal prices, and we have to use the TDA lunch equity tool, and we're going to have to go up on our lunch prices. I believe 5 cents is what the rate that we have to go up. Gina Valdez is on, and she can validate that for me. I'd appreciate it.
Yes, ma'am, that's correct. 5 cents.
Okay. And we're still waiting on the reimbursement rates from the federal government. We need to adopt all these things, but we're always waiting on another piece to roll out before we get the whole answer. So then she detailed out all the efforts they did to help our families by sharing out all the PEBT information. So, and I've got a little more of a financial update in our budget report. So do y'all have any questions on what's going on in food service?
I do have one question. A year ago, we talked about phasing out I think it was the free breakfast to all at the younger ages.
Correct.
And we were talking about phasing that out, and we said we're not going to do it last fall because we didn't want people to get hit by it all at once. What are we doing going forward? Because that was a significant cost to the district. And I don't remember the exact numbers, but I think it was like $80,000, $90,000 a year that we were in the hole on that.
Right. As you recall, one of the hurdles was the inability to communicate it way ahead of time and warn the families. We, as an administration, haven't even looked at it at this point with the pandemic issues. Do we take that benefit away from families that are hurting? So we have the same hurdle that we haven't been able to communicate it because we've been closed, and we, have the hurdle of taking away something from families that are hurting from a pandemic.
I understand, but the point is that we wouldn't be taking it away from those that had free lunches or reduced, or anyway, they would receive that regardless. So you're not taking away something from people that theoretically would be hurting. I understand what's going on across the board, but we need to consider, looking at the budget, and I know that's coming up, we need to look at the options. So,
yeah.
Any other questions or comments for Ms. Day? Okay, thank you, Louise. We appreciate it. All right, now moving on to item, where are we? 9C?
Yes.
Okay. Am I in the right place? Yeah, I think I am. Okay. 9C, update on the issuance of Independent School District Unlimited Tax Funding, Refunding Bonds, Taxable Series 2020. Mr. Kelly.
That is Louise again.
Okay.
Okay, yes, I have asked Victor Kuroga to give us an update, and he is on the call and available.
Okay.
And I will turn it over to him.
Great, thank you. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for having me. So we're here tonight to present some pretty good news for you. We went ahead and refinanced the bonds that you allowed us to refinance the district's through 2013 bonds. The last time you saw me at your June 25th board meeting, you allowed myself and Ms. Day to move forward with the necessary bond documentation to refinance those bonds. So we went into the market on July 21st, and we were able to lock in a favorable interest rate for the district. We targeted $42.81 million in outstanding bonds. The interest rate on those bonds was a fixed rate of 4.58%. We were able to lock in a lower interest rate of 2.09% on the 21st. And so what that did is that generated interest cost savings to the district's taxpayers of $11.3 million. When we were first talking last month, we were thinking the savings would be approximately $8.9 million. So we came up about $2.4 million better than budgeted. And so we met our minimum PV savings ratio target of 5%. We actually came in at a 20.86% ratio, which is pretty phenomenal, pretty significant. Typically, when we get single-digit PV savings ratios, we're very excited in our industry and we jump at that opportunity. But here was 20%, and so that was just a sign of how good that interest rate and the refinancing was. On that chart on the right side, if you have it in front of you, the overview of the refinancing results. I'm sorry, I'm looking at something. I don't know if everybody's looking at it too. But on the right side, this is just to show you all we did here, ladies and gentlemen. We just switched a high interest rate with a low interest rate. We did not extend the original final maturity of your debt. We're still going to pay it off in 2043. And on average, we're going to save about $493,000 in interest cost savings to the district's taxpayers on that one particular bond issue. So we're very excited and happy for this. This is a nearly a record in terms of the interest cost savings we're able to achieve for our clients. So no action is necessary. This is just a board update for you. You already approved us to move forward. We're able to get these low interest rates because the state allowed us to use their AAA rating. But also the district itself has a very strong rating, an underlying rating of a AA minus. Ms. Day did a wonderful job visiting with Standard & Poor's and the bond underwriters to explain the financial situation of the district, and they consider it to be very strong, particularly y'all's very strong fund balance. I'll be happy to answer any questions, but it's really good news and we're very excited for the district.
We're very excited too, Victor. I'm sure I'm speaking for everyone on that. That is incredible work. Thank you so much.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you for the opportunity.
Any questions, comments from the board? I gave the yippee, so but you're welcome to chime in. Okay, thank you. We needed some good news.
Yes.
Some tonight.
I'm
Thank
glad
you.
to provide it. Thank you for having me.
We appreciate your work. Appreciate you being here tonight.
Take care.
Okay. All right, we'll move on to the consent agenda. All items under consent agenda are considered to be routine by the Board of Trustees and will be enacted with one motion. There will be no separate discussion of items unless a board member so requests, in which event the item will be removed from the consent agenda and considered as an item on the regular agenda. These include the approval of minutes of the regular meeting of June 25th and special meeting of July 21st, 2020, approval of out-of-district transfer students for the 2021 school year, approval of budget change requests, approval of the agreement between the Craft Training Center of the Coastal Bend and the Flower Bluff Independent School District for training and apprenticeship programs, approval of Education Service Center services agreement for 2021, approval of Student Code of Conduct 2021, approval of the memorandum of understanding between, this is a long one, between the Nueces County Community Action Agency, Birth to 5 Head Start Program, and the FBISD for providing appropriate placements for children with disabilities. Is there any board member who would like any one of these pulled and discussed separately? Okay, with that said, then I need a motion, please.
So moved.
Who was that? Mr. Morgan, was that you?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, sir.
I'll second.
And a second. Thank you, Mr. Hooper. Any other questions or comments? All in favor, please raise your hands where I can see them. All right, that looks like 7. Very good. All right, we'll move on to action items, beginning with 11A, which is the approval of an interlocal acquisition agreement with Region 4 Education Service Center to purchase devices through TEA's Operation Connectivity. Mr. Kelly.
Yeah, I'm going to turn this over to Alex. I want to compliment Alex on getting out there and getting locked in on some of these opportunities. And Alex, is this the one that you were waiting on the MOU at about 4:30?
Yes, we got it about an hour before the board meeting.
Yeah. So anyway, Alex, go ahead, please.
Thank you. So it looks like TEA is going to come through with their 50% matching of funds so that we can get some devices. It's called Project Connectivity. We were able to secure 550 Chromebooks at half the price, and the original price was a good price, and then half of that, and then the hotspots so that we can get some AT&T hotspots out there for some of the families that really need it. And we were able to get that at an additional 50% off as well. So that's 66 more hotspots on top of the grant that we got before. So what you have before you, we just emailed the interlocal agreement. The Region 4 Service Center is the one that's going to be doing the administration of this bulk order. And so we'd like to ask that you look at that and give your blessing on it.
Okay. Any questions for Mr. Puente? Just wow, Alex. Thank you. That's great. So I'll need a motion, please.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Thank you, Mr. Hooper. And a
Madam
second?
President, I'll second the motion, but I do have a question for Mr.
Okay.
Puente.
Go ahead.
So once we get the hotspots and the Chromebooks, do we know yet how we're going to get that information out to the families that need them and prioritize the families that need them?
So what we're going to do with the Chromebooks, the first thing is take 346 of them, and we're going to give them to the teachers, because the teachers are going to be needing to actually teach from either home or the classroom. So that's going to take care of that. That leaves the remaining Chromebooks. We have about 2,700 of them in the whole district, plus the leftover, and we're going to have those available from the librarians that will be giving those out per campus. It's the campus principal who will be making the final decision as to whether they're allowed to do that. The families will sign an agreement and they'll do that. But for the most part, it's going to be a first come, go to the principal, they bless it, and then they're given out.
Okay. And we're doing something, or I assume that we're going to make a concerted effort to let parents know, especially during any time that distance learning is necessary, that we have this available, because I think it's a tremendous program and we really need to shout it to the hills.
Yes, I'll get with Ms. Sneed and we'll make sure that we shout it out.
Thank you. Great job.
Thank you.
And now we have, I think everybody has a Facebook page now, every campus. Is that correct? So I think if they can also get the word out specifically to their parents and their children for that campus. Right, Alex? Is that right?
Yes, that's
Okay.
correct.
Very good. That way they're not trying to search around somewhere. All right, I had a motion and a second. Mr. Hooper with the motion, Mr. Rank with the second. All in favor, please raise your hands. Very good, 7-0. All right, move on to action item 11B. Oh gosh, this is an easy one. Call for board trustee election to be held on November 3rd, 2020. We just need a motion and a second, please.
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Hooper. And a second? Second. Thank you, Ms. Peters. Are there any questions? No. All right. Do you have a question, Mr. Rank?
No.
Oh, I don't know. Your block came up. You know, it's like playing Hollywood squares. These little squares. I'm sorry. Okay. All right. All in favor, hands up. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Very good. Okay. Next item. We are at set the date for the public hearing for the 2021 proposed budget and tax rate. Louise, is this you? I'm thinking.
Mhm.
I lost my mouse for a moment. Yes, it's the standard. The board has to call for the hearing and the election, and it just needs a motion. And we have done in the past years, we've done on a special meeting. And this year with TEA not giving us our rates for another week or so and all the complexities of House Bill 3, I don't see any reason to do it other than on our regular board meeting night. So it's often been a special, but this is not. So.
Okay. All right. Questions, comments?
President? No, I make a motion that we make the date of August 27th at 6 p.m. the public hearing for the 2021 proposed budget and tax rate.
Thank you, Mrs. Welp. And a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Mr. Hooper. Okay, if there are no other questions or comments, all in favor? Hands up. 5, 6, 7. Very good. All right. 11D, set the date for the board meeting to adopt the 2021 budget and set the tax rate. Again, I guess I'm assuming it's the same. Go ahead, Louise. I won't interrupt.
Immediately following the public hearing will be the adoption at the regular meeting.
Okay. So I need a motion.
I make a motion to so moved.
Thank you, Ms. Welp. And a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Peters. And all in favor? Very good. All right, and we've taken care of 11E, so let's move on to Mr. Kelly. Do we have any reason for a closed meeting tonight, sir?
No, ma'am, but I would feel a little better if y'all actually voted on the contract. Remember, we didn't do that part at the first.
Yes, we're going to get down to 13 right now.
Oh, I thought, no, I'm showing it as E on mine.
Oh, well, that was just to name you.
Okay, all right, I'm good. I was just teasing.
You're named now. You're named, and now we're gonna do the other part. So the first.
To answer your question, I do not have any reason to go into closed session tonight.
Okay, very good. All right, and the board has already had an opportunity to review the contract, so I will entertain a motion. This is kind of like 13A is the way I'm thinking about it, for Mr. Kelly's contract. So a motion, please.
I'll make a motion that we approve Mr. Kelly's contract as provided.
Thank you, Mr. Hooper. And a second?
I'll second.
Okay, I think I heard Mr. Needham. All right, second from Jim Needham. All in favor? All right, now he can't escape.
Wait, remember, if you read it, it was an at-will type deal, okay? So
yeah, I know.
Again,
I know what it says.
In all sincerity, I want to tell you how much I appreciate the vote of confidence that you put in me. It is, as I put out in the email, it's unprecedented times. The way I'm going at this is that this is Dr. Freeman's show, and my job is to keep things rolling in the direction that I think he wanted it going, and hope and pray that he's back with us sooner rather than later so I can go back to being retired, but more importantly, that a fantastic man is back on the job. So anyway, we're going to get through it, but again, it is very humbling that y'all have put this kind of trust in me again. And I've got a great team. We're going to make this work. So thank you.
You have brought, again, you've calmed the waters and brought a lot of confidence for us. We appreciate that so much.
All righty.
Okay. Any other comments anybody'd like to make on that before we move to 13B, so to speak? Yes, Mr. Needham.
Yeah, Joe, it's great to have you back, and unfortunate circumstances, but I know that this will give David a chance and his family a chance to focus on everybody getting well, and that is the most important thing ahead of the district. But having you back, boy, that makes it a whole lot easier on us, because this is not a time where you would want to try to bring in somebody else to pinch hit. Thanks.
Well, I appreciate that. And I'm told that the other day that there was some recognition and David being able to somehow either blink his eyes or whatever with a nurse that let them know that he heard them and that he understood them. My hope is that someone is conveying this setup. I know Shirley had talked with him before he got into this current state, but I'm hoping somebody would, can get that kind of lodged in his brain, because I truly believe that it would help with his healing. To not, I mean, he's so driven to do the right thing that if he can just kind of get that piece out of his head and just, like you say, focus on getting better, I think it will help the healing process. So anyway, I don't know with his wife current situation if she's been able to do that, but maybe Shirley, maybe somehow we can see if we can get that message to him.
I'll do that. Yeah. Yes, sir. Thank you for those words. Okay, we need a motion for all of our other personnel changes. So who's up on that one?
I'll make a motion that we approve the personnel changes as submitted.
Thank you, Mr. Hooper. And a second?
I'll second.
Who was that?
Jennifer, second.
As well. All in favor, hands up. Got him. Thank you. All right, at this point, I believe we are moving into, where are we? Number 14. This is an action item, approval of the 2021 compensation plan. Mr. Kelly.
I think one of the drawbacks of this Zoom type meeting is that usually at this point in time, we'd be getting up to get a plate of food and then going back. Yeah. So anyway, since we can't do that, Louise, let's go ahead and roll on with your presentation.
Well, do we need to go into a workshop setting, or are we good to go? Because the personnel approval, the compensation plans after the budget presentation.
Okay, so that's actually item 15. And so, so then on item 14, we are just now moving into, you're right, moving into a workshop setting, kind of. Same setting, different topic.
Yeah. Okay. I think so, yeah.
All right. Alex has our PowerPoint and he can let it roll. There we go. All right. So we'll start as usual with where we are this year. And the budget highlights we've talked about, we had a decline in our enrollment. Obviously, COVID impacted that some in the end. And we gave a raise to the teachers of 3%. We had our salary study and did the equity budgets. TEA compressed our rate and we adopted a balanced budget. So on our revenue projection, we continue to be surprised that the tax revenue keeps rolling in, because we projected it to maybe slow down a little bit in the economic, slowdown, and it really hasn't. So we've achieved our budget in that area. Local revenues are falling short. Obviously, we haven't had summer tuition. We haven't had facility rentals, athletic events. The state revenues, although we had a final ADA decline, we had an increase in the weighting on our students, because they're funded not only on their count, but on their economic disadvantaged, on dyslexia, on bilingual, on special ed. So our weighted populations went up. So we didn't end up with a deficit in our funding. And federal revenues, we project to be down because of the closure of school not providing the same level of charge services that we normally would have. But overall, we're within budget. And on our expenditure side, we have underspent from the budget 1.6 million, and that is a result of closing school, doing everything remote. We didn't have overtime, we didn't have temporary employees working, we didn't provide as many of the services, there was very little travel. So this was kind of what we expected because of the closure. We basically didn't operate schools since March, or operate our full capacity. And so the final impact on our fund balance on the next slide. We ended last year with just shy of 19 million. That 1.8 will roll in, but as you recall, we already committed almost 2 million for capital projects this year that are ongoing right now. I think the print shop will transfer 75 and student nutrition 250 will transfer in. We are gonna use the CARES Act funds to help shore up some shortages in those areas. And then the last item down there is the CARES Act, the ESSER funding that the federal government gave us and the state took from our FSP. So that amount is coming off of our revenue. And that my revenue projection on the 2 slides ago did not take that money out. I prefer seeing it specifically identified. It's coming out of there and going in a special fund, and then we can use it to for COVID related expenditures.
Okay.
And they finally rolled out the application. We'll be applying, and I've got a little more information on that later, but we will be primarily, after meeting with leadership, applying for cost that, like in food service and print shop, for these departments that were shut down and didn't have the revenue to support the services. So we are expecting to end the year at 17.8. So any questions on those slides before we go into the bond update? Okay. We hadn't given a bond update in a while. I just keep saying we could hit fund balance. We could hit fund balance. The project expenses to date are 48.3 million. We had available funds from the bonds and the interest earnings over time of 48.6. So we have remaining funds of 300,000. I expect some of that to be utilized for the soft cost on the high school project that's ongoing right now. And the remaining projects that were slated to be done from the bond funds are an SDGC renovation, UP high school campus renovation, some expanding the bus yard, and some high school and central kitchen equipment. So of those, the SDGC renovations have changed over time because we're obviously looking to relocate that campus, so we wouldn't spend that one. UP, we did part of the renovations as a capital project, so there's not that much left there. And we're evaluating what we could do on the bus yard, and we'll make a recommendation eventually on that and on the kitchen equipment as well. But if we did all of these, we would have to commit almost $1 million of fund balance to do those projects. So at this time, we're not making a recommendation, just want to update the board.
Okay.
Louise, do you have any questions on bond?
I do. There are 2 columns there on that slide for the like SDGC renovations and all of that.
Right.
Why are there 2 columns?
Because the original spreadsheet tied exactly to the 48 million that we said we were doing in bond projects. And I could have hidden those, but the original for SDGC was 151,800. And we re-roofed those portables as a result of Harvey. And so that part of the project got pulled off.
Okay.
So it's really there because of my reconciliation.
Okay, and the more accurate one is the left-hand column?
Where we actually stand is the left. The original 48 million was the numbers on the right, and the difference is the roofs on SDGC. Sorry for that confusion.
Oh, thank you for clearing it up.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions?
All right. From bond fund projects to health fund. Okay. The health fund at May is running 115 on the % of premium basis. The plan performance, though, has improved because the expenses are decreased. It's kind of a COVID effect. People aren't seeking and doing their routine medical care because they're in shutdown, or they're not having elective surgeries and all of that. So that's why the claims are down. We expect them to go back up. Overall, we're still running in a little red ink. We're looking at, for the renewal, looking at the premium increases and the plan adjustments, and we'll be bringing that soon to talk about it for the January renewal. And on the next slide, we are working with our consultants to modify our plan year. You know, we go through the whole budget process and we adopt a budget, and then we go, oh, wait, let me tell you about healthcare in, November. And so with the COVID situation, the insurance companies have reached out to us to do a no increase renewal with some incentives. And so we took that opportunity for them doing a no increase to go back and say, well, could we do this renewal for 20 months? So that we will align our benefits program with our fiscal year and with our teachers' contracts. So when we hire them starting in September, we've told them what their health care is going to cost, what they're going to make, and that's what they have for the year. So we believe aligning the plan with the school year will be advantageous for our staff. We won't hire you in September and enroll you in the insurance and tell you, but you got to go do it again in November right away. So I think it'll be simpler for for us to budget, for the employees to enroll in sync with their school year. They can enroll in the summer before they start school. And so they're not worried about attending an enrollment hearing or listening to a presentation online while they're teaching and getting it all done. It can be done before they start teaching or in those early days when they're on campus.
I really like that. Yeah, I like that, Louise.
Yeah. And normally I have more numbers presentation there, but we didn't get it in time from the consultant to put it in here. And so I will bring that in the future.
Okay.
As we talk about these renewals. Okay. Questions on health fund? All right. The child nutrition, we continue, we're anticipating about a $500,000 loss that we will absorb a good portion of that with the CARES Act. And the rest will be a fund balance transfer if we have to. We did grab and go through the summer. We are looking at standing up grab and go again. For the new school year, we have pared down our menu. We have just a couple of items. And we were mindful of the serving options, that we have items that could be a grab and go through a line, that could be served in the classroom or could be served in the cafeteria setting. And we will expect losses with the pandemic. I do have to say, had we not had the pandemic, that the performance of the Child Nutrition Fund would have been substantially better than we expected and better than the prior year. So we did a lot to control the cost of the items that were in there, to control overtime, and just, work hard on it. And had we not pandemicked, I think we would have had a pretty good result. So.
Just made a verb. Pandemicked. That's
yes. I use COVIDized too.
I'm going to use that. Any questions? Is that all you have on the child?
Yeah.
Okay. Any questions on that? I can't see anybody, so you'll just have to speak up.
Okay.
I have a question. This might not be the right place to ask it, but if we know, do we have any idea how we're doing on enrollment right now? I mean, you were talking about losses due to the pandemic.
Yeah. Well, we have a normal decline always. There's just a normal progression. You start at 98% and you end at 94%. And that's just a very typical standard that happens every year. And I am going to talk a little bit more about the enrollment when we get into the revenue budget for that. So if we can go to that point, and then I'll elaborate. I think I got a few slides and things that'll show you as well. Absolutely. Okay. All right, capital project considerations. I know last year, possibly last 2 years, we brought those to you at the budget time so that we're looking at what we're going to spend. Well, we have brought Ronnie Robles in as the Chief Operations Officer, And so we're going to look at that in the fall. We want to give him a little more time to review the current plans and evaluate the district. So we'll be looking at that later in the fall. Okay, our tax valuation came in, the certified values came in about where I presented previously. We have about a 2% increase. Our frozen levy continues to rise. It increased by almost 7%. So the adjusted valuation before the frozen levy moved only a skosh. And the estimated levy at the new compressed rate plus the 1 penny is expected to be about 600,000 more than last year. And the state growth rate, they compressed our tax rate based on the state growth rate of 4%. Our growth rate was only 2%, so we won't have a further compression. Had you been a district that had 12% growth in your property, your rate would be far more compressed. So I think on the next slide, I talk about our tax rate considerations. The maximum compressed rate that TEA is approving is 91.64, and they will not certify that rate for almost another week. We had to submit a tax survey with valuations, and I have done that, and it confirmed that we won't compress further. So while I don't have the green light, I expect the green light. We previously in our tax rate have 4 approved pennies of the golden pennies, and this year the board has the opportunity to approve an additional penny by unanimous vote. And so the whole budget presentation is with the assumption that we're going to approve the 1 unanimous penny, the 1 penny in our vote. And my understanding is when we ratify our tax rate and vote on our tax rate, if we vote the tax rate unanimously, that will adopt the golden penny there. And on the next slide, I have the impact on the taxpayer, and I just did a $100,000 house is $10. So you can easily, extrapolate the impact at any level. And that's the impact to a taxpayer. The impact to the district is almost 700,000 in additional funding from the state that we gain access to by adopting that extra penny. Any questions on the penny and the rate? Okay. On the next slide, we started showing all these details last year with House Bill 3 because current year became so critical. We're funded on our current property value and on our current rates, and we're impacted by the frozen levy. And so I know there's a lot of detail on that slide, but basically we predicted on the preliminary estimates 34,749, and we ended at 34,780. So it's just showing that our predictive models are working quite well, and we get really close to the end right there. And on the next slide, it has our T2 values, which are based on the comptroller's property value study, where they validate our appraisal district's calculations of our tax values. And I've estimated our T2 to be 3273, 3.273 billion. Then the yellow highlight, excuse me, and hit. That's the number that we're funded on in the template. And that's why we used to have the lag that we talked about, because we would have been funded this year on the 3.28. The 2019 value would have funded 2020, but House Bill 3 shifted everything to current year. So there's no longer a lag. The template's going to reflect exactly what our tax levy and value is this year. Okay, and I think that's the last of the tax rate slides. Any questions on values or? Okay, on the budgeted revenue, we're budgeting a little less revenue than last year. Taxes are going up naturally because the values have gone up a little and the additional penny. The local revenues we're expecting even less because a lot of the revenues generated in the fall when we're still in shutdown. And the state revenues, a slight increase, and that's really from the additional golden penny, because I budgeted on the same ADA we ended the year. And that extra penny gets us additional state funding. And so that's the 345 there. And federal revenues are going to decline because we aren't providing SHAR services. And so we aren't providing part of the SHAR services because we give personal care services to the students that need it in their IEP. And those personal care services are delivered on the bus, and they're delivered in the classroom, and they're not delivered as much on a Zoom. Some of the services like speech therapy can be done remotely, but the personal care services are the ones that we don't expect to have as much of a billing for. So,
Tell me,
next slide.
Louise, I'm sorry to interrupt. I do have a question. What are those SHAR services you said?
School health related services, and it is for Medicare services to students that we give in the school setting, being speech, being PT, OT, and just nursing services. And they are billable to Medicare, and we actually complete Medicare billings for all the services to the students, and we receive a reimbursement from the state. And that's what the SHAR's school health related services.
I thought Dr. Jaime's point, he didn't say it this way, but essentially that the school is sort of a center of the community. It's a place where we put eyes on the kids, and why CPS reports are coming from schools and all of that. Right. I thought it was a well-made point, and it occurs to me this budget, the budgeted revenue, the reduction in SHAR services, is that predicated on the assumption that we will be doing distance learning for perhaps the entire fall semester, or is that, does reduction in SHAR services assume what for distance learning?
Well, we know that we're going to be for 3 weeks starting. And there's also the SHARS is a federal program, and it has a lag. And so they settle up last year's SHARS during this year. And obviously our settle up this year will not be as substantial as it has been in the past. And then when we're not interim billing, so we're not in school, so we're not interim billing, then those payments don't come in. And so the payments during the year don't come in as quickly.
Okay, so this budgeted revenue is just on the assumption that we'll only be distance learning for 3 weeks, and then
just that we're going to have reduced services, because there's also an anticipation that, as Dr. Fergie said, that a lot of these children receiving services are a more fragile, and he said a lot of them will stay home, and so we're anticipating that as well. But we continue to provide speech and OT and PT, and if we can't do it in the 3 weeks, there are requirements in the special ed that require us to make those services up. So they will eventually get the services, but even if we get the services caught up, the funding won't follow as quickly.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay. So I talked about a little bit of this decline. The other significant budget cut is decline in interest rates, because we had nice interest rates until the pandemic tanked them right down to very little. And we don't have the activities going on. We don't have the SHARS billing. I did only project 96% tax collection, because we still feel there's an uncertainty in that collection due to the economic crisis as a result of the pandemic. So we were more conservative in that. And I budgeted the student count on our end of the year, where we ended the year. And TEA has said, I'm sure y'all have heard, that they will hold us harmless. So on the next slide, this is our ADA from the last 4 or 5 years. So in 1920, this is the COVID year, we ended at 5354. And what they did is took our through the fourth 6 weeks and did a trend slide that we would, like I said, there's trends out there on how much we declined. So they did a trend slide and we ended at 53.54. So we started the first couple of 6 weeks quite a bit higher. And so the average will be drugged down. So the column next to it, if I have to use the TEA floors, everything else is the same in those numbers. And that's just what the using a floor instead of a high attendance number will do to the end of the year if everything else remained the same. So difficult to predict this. We're just budgeted at the same ADA. The TEA number is a floor. If your attendance is better, then you get the higher number. So this is kind of the worst case scenario. We are still approving transfers. We have had enrollment online. We still have a ways to go to see where those counts are. Our transfers are a little bit lower than last year, but we're still getting transfers and they're still evaluating them. So at this point, we are working that we should end up pretty close to last year from the transfers, but a real wild card on how many are coming back to school and how many won't register. And we just don't have the information yet. Does that help at all?
Yep.
That answers my question on it.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay. On the expense side, we have, with the revenue we budgeted and the expenses, it is a negative budget, 928,000. The expenses include the changes that we've brought in personnel through the year. We're adding 2 additional assistant principals at the elementary level. It reflects the cost of having a police force, additional instructional director, staff realignments, and other just general increased budget adjustments that we would do. What I did not do in this budget is make any downward adjustment for the inactivity due to COVID and closure. So we kind of left the budgets intact rather than take it down and come back and raise it up, because we don't know how long we'll be in this COVID environment. My anticipation today would be that we will not fully spend this budget, that we will come closer to a balanced budget in the end. But there's a lot of uncertainty. And so I think we need to look at the budget as a real whole budget, as if we were operating with the doors open. And the next slide details just
comment on that.
Okay. Go back, Alex, please.
With David, if you remember, we talked about being strict about trying to figure out how we could cut things. And I don't have a problem with the budget that's been proposed, but what I would like to see is, you mentioned it, there are areas that we could cut or that we would reduce or that we would go after under certain conditions, because we really need to be thinking about a balanced budget, not one that would spend as we've been doing to some degree. And I understand circumstances are extenuating at this time, but I'd like to see what that budget looks like to be balanced. What are those items we would go after? And I know it's challenging to do that, but from a board standpoint, we really, it's hard for me to vote for an extra penny when I don't know how we're going to balance the budget to begin with, and and then we're going to take it out of the fund balance. So I want to make sure that we have something in our hip pocket that says this is how we would achieve that.
Right.
Let me jump in there for a second. What is it, Louise? 80-something% of our budget is salaries. Okay. So the obvious thing, Jerry, is looking at our personnel, and we haven't had enough time to really talk about that yet. There again, you run into contractual deals, but everything in terms of requests for paras and that sort of thing, that people that aren't already on contract, it's all up on the board. I haven't had time to really get in there with Louise and start looking at it. And here's the other thing is, I've heard it mentioned that there, Louise said there was some realignment that David was doing. I'm at a little bit of a loss in that the realignment and org chart seems to only exist either in his computer or in his head. So I'm asking some of the central office folks, what are your new duties? What do you understand them to be? So anyway, I don't know how much, or to get to $1 million, I don't know how many people that would be, but it'd be quite a few. But I think Louise has got her eye on the ball in terms of anything right now that's requested is getting a real hard look. Okay. Now the things that were already on the books, like the police department, I got to get up to speed on that one. I know we have a consultant we spent $3,000 with. I'm not sure what the report is, and I know that there's money allocated for that. But I mean, the good news is we don't have kids for 3 weeks, so our security issues won't be that severe. I'll have time to get up to speed on it. But anyway, the whole point of that is salaries is the only place that you could, not the only place, but it is the major place that you can do reductions.
And I understand that, Joe. I mean, all I'm saying is before we have our, in our meeting in August, we ought to have another budget that's out there that says, in this case, we have to balance it. This is where, this is the target areas we go after. That's all I'm asking for.
Okay. All right. Louise, we can visit on that.
Sure. And, this budget is a maximum. It's not a open credit card. We are still visiting with our principals and all of our departments that we're heading for a difficult economic time, and we need to consider each purchase carefully. And so we are having those conversations, and I will work towards finding where we could potentially get to a balanced budget on there. I think we've covered the next slide where we talked about the additions. I kind of covered that verbally. So on the next slide, I'm just talking about the things in the budget that we know are not going to be fully spent. The travel, the overtime, supplemental security, all the expense of game officials and services are going to be greatly reduced because we have a limited season. We aren't paying substitutes. We aren't paying the contracted guard of services to come pick up all the cash that's in the department. We aren't paying the crossing guards when the kids aren't crossing the street. So there's just a lot of different things that we aren't going to pay, which may assist in balancing the budget, but they're temporary. So that was one of the reasons, in my perspective, that we don't adjust the budget for those types of savings, because they are going to be back in the next year when we're not operating under a pandemic. But I don't expect them to be fully spent. On the next slide is our usual detailed presentation of the budget that y'all see. Last year we budgeted on ADA of 5402. We're budgeting on 5355 this year. The revenues are slightly down. You can see in all the areas of spending, we're pretty consistent with the prior year. There aren't a lot of leaps and bounds in any one of our functions or options in there. Do you have any questions on the detail budget? Okay, so now all the uncertainty is where we're heading. So on the next slide, these are all the things that are floating around out there as we try to adopt, real budgets and real numbers. So I want to just talk a little bit about the impact of House Bill 3 on the next slide. This is a history of our revenue for 5 years. And then the required spending, the spending requirements from the state that we have to meet. So last year, 1920, or the current year, and next year are House Bill 3 years. And you can see that as a percentage of our state funding, we've gone from 45% up to 55%, and that we're being, we have to meet these spending objectives. That's what House Bill 3 did. They rolled out a dyslexia and required us to do those programs. They've done the early education allotment, college, career, and military readiness. They revamped comp ed, and prior in 16, 17, 18, we were 1.5 million, pretty steady based on our free and reduced lunch. In the next year, we had Harvey, and we had far more free and reduced kids. So we had a leap. They qualified for homeless status and different at risk through the impact of Hurricane Harvey. And so we had greatly increased comp ed. Come House Bill 3, and this is where they brought in the, I'm going to forget what they called them, where they put them all into their geocode, their actual, and ranked every code, and that it blew up the comp ed funding as a result of that, up to 2.2 million. That was the biggest increase, and the special ed increased as well. So, and I just like to point out in 18-19 that we had 3 different special revenues that we would have had a negative budget and a negative result that year had it not been for those one-time funding options. So, and if you look at the total revenue overall, I mean, we've had very little increase or movement in there, but we have had increasing cost for insurance, for utilities, for raises for teachers, for healthcare cost. And so we are working in a difficult environment, living on this fixed income diet that TEA has placed us on. On the next slide, there's just a graphical of that, how much the total revenue and how much is earmarked by TEA there on the state. So, and the next slide, just a reminder that we've talked about in the first presentation this year, is the state budget and the pitfalls. I think I read that they're currently estimating a $4.8 billion shortfall in the state, and I believe the rainy day fund is $11 billion. So we do need to be conservative in what we do. On the next slide, this is a comparison of our staff to our enrollment. And the most dramatic thing on this is 2012. We talked about in our first budget meeting the state's reaction to the last economic recession that we had. Those were the staff cuts that had to be put in place by the state requirement. And so it has worked its way back up and then coming down a little bit there. But clearly we have had a significant increase in our staff over 5 years without much increase in our student population at all. And that is a model difficult to sustain. And the next slide gives the black line is our fund balance, which has kind of remained fairly steady, but is declining in relation to our total revenues and expenses, which are the green and the red. And the blue line is our enrollment. Put over that. So that is kind of our, enrollment picture and the uncertainty from the state with the future in the budget. And we need to keep attracting students to the wonderful educational institutions that we're running.
Louise, I've got a question.
Uh-huh.
On this slide with the enrollment, there doesn't appear to be a scale for that. It looks really dramatic, especially, the between 13 and 14.
Right.
Give me a sense of scale. What was the percentage change between 2013 and 2014?
Oh, the percentage changes have not been very high, and I don't have that right in front of me. This
on the right side for enrollment.
Oh, is that? I'm sorry. Sure enough, it's right there in black and white. Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you.
I apologize.
I've looked at it so many times. It's hard to have a scale because the other scale is in millions and this is in thousands. The most dramatic drop we had was to 5209 at one point that we dropped.
Okay, and so
Since
that
then.
difference between 2013 and 2014 only amounted to 160 students.
Right.
Okay, thank you. I apologize for
Right.
that.
And we're also distorted from the 2017 or 2017 with our Harvey, because we housed those poor day kids and it inflated our number there. So the fall was less dramatic. It was from Harvey kids. And we did in 19, we rolled out tuition free, and we did have an increase in our ADA when we dropped that tuition. So that was successful.
I want to jump in. I teased Louise and call her the queen of doom and gloom, but you know, it's the reality in the world that she lives in. But I want to compliment her knowledge base. She understands this stuff backwards and forwards, and you're doing a great job. You know, but it's the same thing we're facing in the whole educational system. You don't have all the info you need, you know, right now when we're getting ready to start a new school year. It's just maddening. Anyway, my hat's off to you though, in your knowledge base and what you're doing for us. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I want to add to that. Thank you. I particularly appreciate your insight into the causes behind the number changes. For instance, the effect of the reducing tuition between 18 and 19. It's helpful to see, to have that insight. So thank you. I join Joe in his comment.
Thank you. On the next slide, we're just talking about some of the additional funding that's out there with COVID so far. And the CARES Act is the money that they took from our FSP, as I illustrated on the fund balance. And we are going to be applying for that. And as I said, we're going to look to recover a substantial amount of the cost in the programs that were shut down from there. There's another grant that finally rolled out today. We'll apply for it in August as well, or the details rolled out. It only covers from March 1st to the date they rolled it out, May 20th. And there's an opportunity to recoup any costs that we've had for sanitation, cleaning. It's a real specific narrow, and that one's being administered by TDM. So I'm going to shake hands with TDM and start to learn their way. And then there's also a grant that rolled out for SHARS providers that will give them up to 2% of their claims. We are eligible. It has to be done by Monday. Just came out this week. So we will get it started. We don't really know how that will flush out, but it is an opportunity to recoup some funds. So hopefully that will go. And I know they've got things floating out there that they say they're going to do for schools, but I haven't seen the details on that. So on the next slide is a giant question mark. Salary considerations. I haven't even put the cost of any raise or anything in our talks, you know, with David prior to this, and I haven't had much of a chance to catch Joe up on this, but I feel that we need to recommend a salary freeze. And I'll entertain a discussion with the board if we want to.
Well, I was afraid that was coming. That's my comment. And I think that right now, maybe after you and Joe, not that it'll change your thought on this, but I think Joe needs a little bit of time to get caught up on all of this too with you. And maybe, you know, I'm hoping something changes a little bit here or there. If we need to have another budget meeting prior to, if that's something you think we need to do after you get some other numbers together, if that's something you have to do, I don't think it'll be a problem. I know it won't be a problem.
I think we've been very fortunate for a long time in giving raises. And I know that when I was in the trenches, that if I got a little bit more on the net on that next year, then that was good enough. But at the same time, we're in unprecedented times, and we haven't really seen just how far this thing is going to go economically. You know, you got a 30-something million out of work right now, and if there ever, I guess my point is, if there was ever a year that I would think the staff would understand, this might be the year. I too would love to give some sort of something. So let us get together. What I do know is sometimes Louise hides money back there, and I'll dig the truth out of her and see if there is. But I don't know. Like I say, it's just tough times. And I too, when you said that, I was expecting this because I haven't had time to go through this with Louise. But that was on my Louise questions. That was it. Is there a teacher raise? You know, so we don't know yet, obviously, but it doesn't look like it. So we'll see. So you got
Questions?
Any other questions?
Shirley, quick comment.
Sure.
Yeah, I agree with what Mr. Kelly said, and I feel like I, as well as most of the rest of the board, if not all of the board, we've always advocated for doing as much as we possibly can. But the uncertainty here is what concerns me, because even if we stretched and did something this year, then we're committing that for future years. And, you know, everybody would like to believe that this thing's going to settle down, you know, at the end of this year, early into next year. There's nothing to support that other than hope. You know, look at past pandemics. This could go on for another 2 or 3 years and get worse. And you start having businesses fold and people out of work and people moving away. And I think that's certainly a possibility with the island because of the cost of insurance and taxes and so forth. People lose their jobs out here. They got to go find a different place to live. So I'm just concerned about what the tax revenues are going to look like, and looking at enrollment numbers in the coming year or two beyond this one. I think we need to exercise caution. If it's there and we're confident that we can maintain it, then I would certainly agree to it. I fully support our staff and like to reward them whenever possible. But I think there's a whole lot of we don't know in this one. Thanks.
Well said, Dr. Needham. I think I agree with that 100%. Anybody else?
Yep.
Any other comments? Okay. All right. Louise, anything else?
Hey, we have our calendar, and we have to publish our notice to the Caller Times 10 days prior to the hearing with the budget and the tax rate and everything. And so obviously that's a drop dead date, that we need to be comfortable with the budget we're presenting. And so if we want to reconvene, we would need to reconvene prior to that date.
Okay.
To put new numbers on it. And then out of the workshop setting, we've got, a personnel make a decision. And so we can take no action on that and reconvene or revisit, work the numbers, get up to speed, whatever direction that y'all want to give us. And we'd be happy to work with.
The 17th is, that's a Monday. So really you're talking about in the next 2 weeks. So I'll tell you what, let's let Louise and I visit in the morning, and then we'll shoot something back out to you. Calling a special meeting virtually is pretty easy. It's a lot easier than trying to get everybody to get off work and get to the central office. So if you will, just give us till in the morning and we'll do some talking about that and get back to you.
Okay, I think that's a good idea. Any other comments about that? Okay,
I appreciate your support and your time. Thank you.
we appreciate everything you're doing. Wow, okay. All right, now we're moving to item 15, approval of the 2021 compensation plan. Is that, am I right? Is that where we are?
Yes.
Okay, there we go.
Which if we're not prepared to approve it as a frozen, then we can table it and not take action on it.
Then that guarantees we got to come back with a special meeting.
Come back with the special meeting or just adopt it when we adopt the tax rate and do everything.
On the 27th?
Yeah, I mean, we normally did, for years, we did salaries after the fact at the last minute. You know, we started a new transition with the study last year, doing it early. And I'd prefer early, but COVID hasn't been conducive for that.
Yeah, okay. I'm good.
Thoughts from the board on that?
I agree. I think we should table it.
Okay.
I agree as well. Do you need a motion for that?
I was going to say, I believe we do.
We do.
Madam President, I move that we table, what is it, item 15, the compensation approval until a further meeting.
Second.
Who was the second? Was that Mr. Hooper?
Jim or Mike?
Okay. I think I have Hooper, Rankin Hooper. All in favor? Hands up. Okay, very good. All right. Wow. I know, I'm praying for good news on everything. Something will shake loose. So I'm gonna give y'all a little time, visit, and then we can, you consider the things that Mr. Hooper mentioned, consider all the other, I don't know, consider all of it. I don't envy the position of trying to do that, Louise. I know it's hard, and we do want to help our employees all we can. We always do. So
yes, we do.
We'll just keep working at it. All right. Calendar items. Boards may set dates for special meetings, which we may be doing on this. It's a possibility. And here it will be a special meeting. So Mr. Kelly, if you'll just let us know when that'll happen, appreciate that. And we can receive information regarding other special dates. Agenda items for August. Members of the board may submit requests for information to be considered at the regular August board meeting. And now I think we can move on to announcements, beginning with our acting superintendent.
What I want to point out is my focus since I've been on the job is to try and get our reopening document out. Some of you may have seen, Monica forwarded the thing I sent to the troops, and we also posted it for the public. I mean, here it is, July 28th, and we think we've got it, spit shine and polished up and ready to go out. And then they throw us a curveball. We got to, go back to the drawing board, make sure we're in compliance. I think we're there, but that's primarily what I've been working on, is trying to pull principals together and central office together. And I think we're there. In fact, the plan is to launch this document tomorrow, and that's going to free up the principals to start using their Facebook pages for their particular communities, because people have just been waiting too long to get some information. So that's what I have been doing. And my notes said that I've met with Central, I've met with the principals, I've done some soul searching about applying for the 4-week, extra 4 weeks of going online. And so I got 2 different pieces of information to kind of, let percolate down. Dr. Fergie's information was really kind of eye-opening for me. Okay. And when you do figure in the overall, I mean, for many kids, coming to school is absolutely the best and safest place they've got. And you're not going to find anybody that wants to see those kids in school with teachers, with football, with all the cool stuff that goes with school. But man, this is a different animal that we're dealing with here. So, and then the other piece of information that I got tonight was, well, we save money if we cut out everything. We just do it virtually. So there's your balanced budget, Jerry, is we just go virtual all year long. But I know I want to, I'm lying to do that. The board has to approve a waiver. Okay. So I would ask y'all to start kind of mulling that around. Again, you know, our principals are in favor of it, but it's like every dadgum decision we've got to make right now. You make a decision and there's a ripple effect that you weren't even looking at. Okay. So be thinking about that a little bit, because if we obviously now we're going to have a special meeting. We could take care of that if that's what our recommendation. I'm not prepared. I was prepared to say that I think we should do that. Around the state, seems like there are a lot of people that are accessing that option just to buy some time and see if this thing settles down a little bit. But we'll have that discussion down the road. So Louise and I will get together and get back with you.
Uh-oh. I think he froze up.
I appreciate the confidence you're putting in our team, and we won't let you down.
Well, thank you.
Am I frozen?
You were just for a second.
Oh, no, I lost you.
You're back now. You're back. Just for a second. It's okay. Thank you, Mr. Kelly. All right, board comments. Mrs. Peters, I'm going to start with you.
And well, thank you. It's good to see all your faces, and I don't really have anything to say, but thanks for your hard work on the budget, Louise, and that's tough stuff. So, and thank you, Mr. Kelly, for coming back.
You're welcome.
And let me see who's next. Mr. Rank.
Thank you, Ms. Thornton. First off, I want to reiterate that we can't say it enough, in my opinion. Thank you, Joe, for stepping in at this time. Thank you. Thank you. Second, as to the hard decisions before you and to your focus. I'm sorry, I was getting a little bit, maybe my connection is slow.
Go ahead. I think we can hear you now. There seemed like some feedback or something. I'm not sure what that was.
All right. I would ask, well, first off, I think, Mr. Kelly, if you're still with us, your focus on the document, on the reopening document, is the correct focus. It's obviously the top priority in my book. To that end, I want to make a comment about the Attorney General opinion that came out earlier this week, I guess. And I want to say, first off, that an Attorney General opinion is just that. It's an opinion of an attorney. It's not a judge's ruling. And there's an important difference. That said, what the AG's opinion said, I very much agree with, and it would be my opinion. I actually had a similar opinion before that one came out. And what the AG's opinion says, I'm sure you've read, is that it's up to the local school districts. It doesn't say that we can't do distance learning until after Labor Day. It just says that it's up to us, not the county health department. That said, I think that it is, because families have been planning on this, because it's leaked out to the community that this is the plan, and because people have made plans around that and we're so late in the game, I would like to see things remain the same, see our plan stay the course, and see us make the decision as a district to do the first few weeks as distance learning and bring kids back at the time we've been planning and the community's been planning to bring them back. I would support any waiver that we need to approve to get that done, and I would support any special meeting or any other action that we need to keep that done, because a little bit of certainty in this very uncertain time makes a big difference in people's lives. So I again want to thank the board for their patience with getting Dr. Fergie here and having his presentation. I certainly think he had some good things to say and some eye-opening things. One of the things that I certainly took home from it, of course, we've all been talking about and particularly sensitive to the issues of the psychological effects on our students, in particular increased suicidal ideations and really horrific things that can happen when we isolate socially. But one of the things that Dr. Fergie highlighted or mentioned, and I would like to highlight, is the fact that the school acts as that center of the community where kids can come and we all put eyes on each other. And if something's going on, that's how we know. And that's the way, I just think it's very vital to the health of the community. We do bring everybody back as soon as possible. But I also think that just because we're so late in the game, to change now would be a mistake, and we ought to stick with returning to physical presence after September or after Labor Day. That said, thank you again, Joe, for coming back, and thank you for everybody who's been putting in extra hours and continue to do the good work.
Okay, good. Mrs. Welp.
Good evening. Last time I had a low bandwidth. Can you hear me okay now?
It's really broken up, but yes, we can hear you.
Okay, that's all. I need a hot spot. I have no internet connection. I want to say prayers for Dr. Freeman and his family. That's all.
Thank you, Jennifer. Jim? Yeah. Jim, you're next.
Thanks. Thank you, Joe. Just can't get away from us. No matter how far you move, how long you're going to be retired, always going to be pulled back.
I'm going to retire for sure one of these days. You know? And I told Shirley when she called, I really had gotten pretty used to it. It took me a while, but retirement's all right.
It's not bad. It's not bad.
No.
Well, we're glad that you were willing to come and help us out again. And, you know, the main thing for me is that you're going to help us get through these startup challenges. But the other thing is that David and his family can have some peace of mind that he doesn't need to worry about things, and he can focus on getting well. And I hope keeping him in their prayers, him and his family. And just a thanks again to all our administrative staff and all that they're doing to put everything together, the budget, the finances, and all the planning and communication that goes into this. And I agree with what Jeff said. You know, the presentation was eye-opening and really changed my opinion on how things should go. But I think we have to maintain some consistency. But after hearing his presentation, I think our goal of getting our students back into the classrooms, as long as we feel like our students and our teachers and our staff are safe, then I think, you know, the sooner the better. And just thanks to everyone. And thank you, Shirley, because you're exactly the reason why I don't ever want to be an officer.
Yeah.
Because I know how much you've had to work here lately, and it's got to be just ungodly. But thank you for doing it.
Well, but I have to say, without a board like we have, I really wouldn't have the confidence to do it. That's the truth. And having a God like we have really makes a huge difference for me. Okay, and thank you, Jim. Anything else from you, sir? Okay, and Jerry, how about you, sir?
Well, I can't say anything more than everybody said. I I want to thank Joe for coming back. You know, he's in retirement mode, but I understand, you know, we have this need, and I appreciate you entertaining it. I know that it's, you know, something that you wouldn't have ever thought of doing, but we definitely need your help, and we appreciate it. And I know David appreciates it as well, and his family. So thank you for doing it. As far as the comments about everything that was said, you know, I can't say it any better than Jeff did. I'm the one that's been asking, so when do we go back to school? You know, because you have to know there's an end to it at some point in time. And I think that end is coming. You know, we need to get back to the classroom. I think it's best for the kids. And I think that, you know, Dr. Fergie hit the nail on the head. So I'm looking forward to that. I also support that I don't want to be changing every other day with whatever TEA comes out with, or the governor or anybody else or the local officials. So I think that sticking with a plan and moving forward and supporting that is absolutely the right thing. But I'm ready to get people back to classrooms and you know, getting activities started and everything we can. So I appreciate all the work that's done on the budget as well. I know there's a lot of tough questions. I am kind of a balanced budget kind of mentality. So I like to see that and know where we need to go in the event that we don't get the extra monies we think we might get. But I think you guys have done a great job, and I appreciate everybody in the district. It's tough times. It's going to be tough, but everybody here can, you know, pull together, and they've done it time and time again. And I want to say thank you to everybody. So that's all I have for tonight.
Good. Well done. Michael?
I want to say that I agree with what Dr. Needham said about the need to be very purposeful and careful in getting the kids back into the classroom and helping our teachers and staff through this. Also, I agree with what Jeff said about getting them back as soon as we can after Labor Day. This is something that this is the time of the year where the board members, we earn our salary because we got to look at budget and decisions that have to be made. And I just thank the administrative team up there, and I'm just so thankful that Mr. Kelly came back to help us again. I think his nickname is going to probably be Boomerang Kelly because he keeps coming back, thankfully.
Only for the Bluff, only for the place I love, okay?
And I just want to end it. I thank you for leaving the beaches of Gulf Shores and helping us here tonight.
Not a problem.
Well, I guess I'm last. So I'm just I can just say ditto to everything that's been said, but I want to add this one thing. I really am, I feel so blessed to be working with the people in this group. It's kind of cool to get to see all of you at one time, actually. And I know that there's not a single problem that we cannot beat. We will overcome every single thing that comes, but that's how the Bluff does business. That's how we've always done business. And it's not going to be any different now. We've got a little tougher adversary, but I'm going to tell you, we've been up against some tough ones before. Maybe not this specific thing, but I have all the confidence in the world, all of it, because it's going to happen. Will our employees get a raise? I don't know, but I think if they don't, they'll understand. I think you're right, Joe. They'll totally get it, because right now I just don't, if we maintain for a little bit, maybe that's really all that's going to take for a while. And in the end, I just want you to know that I pray every single morning and every single night for this school, for all of you, and for what you're doing. And I appreciate every minute that you put into this, because you are doing something worthwhile for some people who really matter a lot, all those kids. So with that, I think I'm ready to call for a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Hooper. And a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Rank. All in favor, hands up, give a wave. There you go. Very good. Thank you, everyone. Thank you so much.
Good night.
Good night.
And Alex, good shout out to you, Alex. We couldn't have done it without you. Good night.
Thank you, Alex. Good night, all.
Good night.
All right, see y'all.
All right.